Welcome to another deep dive, and this one's going to be a tough one. This one is really unsettling.
Yeah, it really is.
We're looking into a mass shooting, and, well, figuring out who did it wasn't that hard. It's the one that's a real mystery.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that makes you really think about mass shootings in a different way.
Absolutely.
Huh?
Our main source this time is an episode of the Anatomy of Murder podcast. The episode features an interview with Scott Weinberger, who's an investigative journalist and former deputy sheriff. He actually led the investigation, and he goes pretty deep into the mind of the killer.
Oh.
And in this case, it's actually close to home for me. The parents of my daughter's best friend were at JB's pub that night.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Thankfully, they weren't physically hurt, but the emotional trauma from that night is still with them. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's a reminder that these events have a huge impact, not just on the people directly involved, but on the entire community.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So let's go back to April 14th, 2001. It's just after midnight
Right.
at JB's pub in Elgin, Illinois. Pretty typical Saturday night crowd, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
16 people are shot, 2 of them fatally.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And the guy who did it, Luther Castile, he was a 42-year-old construction truck driver.
Yeah.
And get this, he was caught right there at the scene.
At the scene.
Yeah. And he was armed to the teeth, 2 handguns, 2 sawed-off shotguns, over 200 rounds of ammo. This wasn't just some random bar fight.
No, not at all. That level of, being ready, that suggests a plan.
Mhm.
He really wanted to hurt as many people as possible.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, was this just a spur-of-the-moment thing, or did he plan this out?
Right, exactly. At first I thought, okay, there must have been a huge fight, or maybe he had some kind of personal vendetta against someone there. But as I got deeper into Weinberger's account, things got really strange.
I can imagine.
Yeah, really strange.
Well, one of the first things you do when you're investigating something like this is try to reconstruct the scene. Figure out who he targeted first, if there was a pattern to his victims, or if it was just random. Things like that really help you get into the shooter's head.
And did they find any patterns?
Well, the first person he shot was Jeff Weeds. He was the bar manager and really well liked in the community. Everyone describes him as just a genuinely good guy, a single dad, the kind of person who would do anything for anyone. The second victim was Richard Bartlett. He worked at a factory nearby and was known for being really kind and always willing to help.
So 2 seemingly good guys targeted for no obvious reason.
Yeah, it is strange. Why go after the bar manager? Was there something between them? And what about Richard Bartlett? Was he just in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Yeah, those are my questions too. When Weinberger interrogated Castile, it kind of gave us some clues, but also made things even weirder.
Oh, how so?
Well, Castile said that he felt disrespected by some women at the bar, that they kicked him out. So he went home, shaved his head, and came back looking for revenge.
Shaved his head.
Yep. He even put on army fatigues. It's like he was trying to transform himself, make himself look more intimidating and aggressive.
Yeah, that's creepy. Almost like he was taking on a role or something.
Exactly. And then you hear about how he was acting at the bar before he got kicked out. He was pretending to be a photographer, telling women he wanted to take their pictures back at his place. Total creep, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just about some bar fight anymore. It's something much darker.
Mm.
Like he felt entitled to treat women however he wanted and couldn't handle being rejected.
Yeah, it sounds like he had some serious issues with women, maybe some control issues, and when he didn't get his way, he lashed out violently. Sadly, it's a pattern we see a lot in these cases.
And here's where things get even more bizarre. Castile told Weinberger that he shaved his head to look like Mickey Knox.
Mickey Knox.
Yeah, from the movie Natural Born Killers. He even yelled, "I'm a natural born killer," as he was storming into the bar.
Wow, serious.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Honestly, I'm a little skeptical about how much a movie can really influence someone's behavior, but you have to admit it's a pretty creepy coincidence.
It is. Natural Born Killers is a really disturbing movie full of violence, and it portrays this couple going on a killing spree. And it has been linked to real-life crimes.
Wait, really?
Yeah, there have been cases where people have said the movie inspired them to commit violent acts. It raises some big questions about how media can affect people, especially those who might be vulnerable.
Like that shooting at the motel in Oklahoma back in '95. Those 2 teenagers, they based their whole crime on the movie. They even took trophies from their victims, just like in Natural Born Killers.
Exactly. It shows you how certain types of media, especially when someone becomes obsessed with them, can make violence seem normal or even give people ideas for how to commit crimes.
You know, it reminds me of John Hinckley Jr. and how he tried to assassinate President Reagan.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
He did it because he was obsessed with Jodie Foster's character in Taxi Driver. And he ended up being found not guilty by reason of insanity. Do you think Castile's lawyers could have tried to use a similar defense?
It's possible. If they could prove that Castile was so obsessed with the film that it affected his mental state, they might have been able to argue for a reduced sentence or even an acquittal.
That's interesting. And then there's the whole thing about his twin brother.
Oh, right.
As soon as Weinberger mentioned that my jaw dropped twins in crime, you can't get much more intriguing than that. I'm dying to know more about that part of the story.
Oh, yeah, that's where things really get interesting. But first, we need to unpack what we know about Luther himself. Weinberger's investigation took a sharp turn, kind of like a deflected puck. That's a term he uses from his hockey days.
A deflected puck? What do you mean? What did he uncover?
Well, Weinberger was really thorough with this case. I mean, he actually started watching natural-born killers over and over again, trying to see the world through Castile's eyes and how the movie might have messed with his head.
Wow, that's intense. It must have been hard to keep watching something so disturbing.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't easy. But he did find something really interesting. Castile kept calling his girlfriend Mallory.
Mallory.
Yeah, that's the name of the female lead in the movie. The thing is, his girlfriend looked nothing like the character.
So he wasn't just relating to the character, he was putting his girlfriend in the role. That's messed up.
Exactly. It's like he couldn't separate the movie from real life. And this whole blurring of fantasy and reality became even clearer when they searched his apartment.
What did they find?
Well, it was a complete mess. Beer cans, trash, dirty dishes everywhere. But the really creepy part was they found hair clippers that were still plugged in hair on the floor from when he shaved his head, and a VHS copy of Natural Born Killers right there in the VCR.
Like he just paused it before going out?
Yeah.
That's insane. It's like a scene straight out of the movie.
It really is. And remember, this was only 6 days into his relationship with his girlfriend. She told the investigators that she was getting really scared of him and that he was spending all his time drinking and watching that movie over and over again.
So the movie wasn't just entertainment for him. It was like it was consuming him, fueling all his dark thoughts.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, was this really a copycat crime, or was the movie just the trigger, something that set off all this rage that was already inside him? Because here's the thing, Castile had a long history of violence. We're talking armed robbery, domestic abuse, threatening people with weapons. This wasn't his first time breaking the law.
So it's not as simple as blaming the movie. It's like trying to figure out what came first, the chicken or the egg. Was he always going to be violent, or did the movie push him over the edge? Or maybe it was a combination of both.
It's a tough question, and it comes up a lot in these kinds of cases. How much responsibility does the media have? How much is just a part of someone's personality or their past experiences? It's never an easy answer.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of tough questions, let's talk about his twin brother, Frank. What's the deal with that? I mean, twins in crime, it's like something out of a movie.
The twin brother adds a whole other layer of complexity to this case. Like I said, both Luther and Frank had been in trouble with the law before, but in this case, all the evidence pointed to Luther as the shooter. There was no question of mistaken identity or anything like that.
But Frank wasn't just an innocent bystander, was he?
No, after Luther was convicted, Frank started calling JB's pub and making threats saying he was going to kill everyone there. It's pretty chilling, and it makes you think about their relationship. Were they in cahoots? Was Frank just trying to get revenge for his brother?
It's like a modern-day Cain and Abel story.
It's a dark thought, but the fact that they both had a history of violence suggests that there's something deeper going on. Maybe a genetic predisposition towards aggression, or maybe their environment growing up shaped them that way. It's a question that psychologists and criminologists are always trying to figure out how much of our behavior is predetermined and how much is influenced by our experiences.
It's definitely something to think about. So what happened at the trial? Knowing about Castile's past and his claims about the movie, what kind of legal strategies did they use?
Well, given the circumstances, it's not surprising that the defense tried to use Castile's troubled past and his mental state to their advantage. They argued that he wasn't fully in control of his actions that night, that his mental state and the alcohol he had consumed impaired his judgment.
So they weren't going for the full-on insanity plea.
No, they went for a more subtle approach, trying to make him seem less guilty by highlighting his vulnerabilities. They were probably hoping to get the charges reduced or at least get him a lighter sentence.
Did the prosecution have a good counter-argument?
They did. They presented a really strong case emphasizing that he planned this whole thing out.
Yeah.
They pointed to the shaved head, the army fatigues, the huge stash of ammo. He had all signs that he knew exactly what he was going to do. They also had his confession and the eyewitness accounts from the bar, which backed up their case.
So it was a classic courtroom battle. The defense trying to make the perpetrator seem more human and the prosecution sticking to the facts of the crime.
Exactly. And in this case, the prosecution won. The jury found Castile guilty on 35 of the 37 charges against him, including first-degree murder for the deaths of Jeff Weeds and Richard Bartlett.
What about the sentencing? Did they give him the death penalty?
They did. At first, he was sentenced to death, but later on, the governor of Illinois abolished the death penalty, so his sentence was changed to life in prison.
Wow, that must have been really hard for the victims' families. Getting a guilty verdict, but then having the sentence changed? I imagine it brought up a lot of mixed emotions.
Definitely. These cases are never easy, and the legal outcomes often leave people feeling like justice wasn't served. But it's important to remember that there are real people at the heart of this tragedy, the victims and their families. Their lives were forever changed by what happened that night.
Right. We've been talking so much about the legal and psychological aspects of the case, it's easy to forget about the human cost. What can you tell us about the victims and their families?
It's really heartbreaking. We have statements from Jeff Weeds' mother talking about the pain of losing her son and how his kids will never be the same. And Richard Bartlett's sister, she says she still calls his phone number just to hear his voice on the answering machine.
God, that's so sad. It's easy to forget that these aren't just names in the news. They're real people with families and friends who loved them. Their absence leaves a huge hole in so many lives.
It really does. And the impact goes beyond the victims themselves. We also have a statement from the husband of one of the survivors. He talked about getting to the bar that night and seeing his wife on the floor covered in blood. He didn't even know if she was going to make it.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like for him. The fear, the helplessness.
He talked about how difficult the recovery was, all the physical therapy, the emotional trauma, the constant fear that something like that could happen again. Even for the people who survived, their lives were changed forever.
It really shows you that even when the legal case is over, the emotional and psychological scars can last a lifetime.
You know what's so disturbing about this case? It shows us that darkness can exist even in the most ordinary people. This wasn't a robbery or a drug deal. This was just pure violence, fueled by this guy's inner demons. His obsession with that movie and his history of violence.
Yeah, it makes you think about the power of media and how it can influence people, especially those who might already be struggling with mental health issues or have violent tendencies.
It's a complicated issue, but we need to talk about it more, about the role of media in our society, about how to be more media literate, and about how to address things like mental health and social isolation that can lead to violence.
This deep dive has been tough, but it's been important. It reminds us to be more empathetic and understanding and to work towards creating a world where things like this don't happen anymore.
I agree. And as we finish up, I want to leave you with this thought. What does this case tell us about good and evil? And how can we, as individuals and as a society, focus on the good and fight against the darkness that can sometimes take over?